welcome back to Ignition Core Studio. Today we're going to be going over painting. Now this is going to be for like a tabletop quality model, and I'm going to go over how I'm going to paint this Aggressor Primaris body as a blood angel, and I'm going to show you about the steps that I use and how to achieve the way that I paint for standard, that is. Okay, so follow along. There's going to be a couple paints that you're going to need to know and to have on hand, and they are as followed: Mephiston Red, base color; Carrorsburg Crimson Shade; Evil Sunz Scarlet Red, as well as Troll Slayer Orange. That's for the red armor. Okay, for the gold accents, we're going to be using Retribution armor, as well as Reikland Flesh Shade Gloss. Okay, and of course, then we're going to be using black, Abaddon Black. All right. Now, for painting, you notice I have a new little camera set up. There's two ways you can really kind of go about it: using a dry palette, like which I have here, which kind of gives you a large surface area to work with, but you have less working time, so that's kind of a downside to it. The other thing that you can do is make what's called a wet palette. Now, I'll go over making a wet palette in a later video, and I'll explain how it works and how you can make your own at home. But for today, we're going to use a dry palette, and for this, I just use a big piece of tile that I got from like Home Depot for like 40 cents or whatever. And yeah, it works. And once you've pretty much used up all your spaces here, you can just either soak it in like LA is Totally Awesome, which I'll be again referencing in a different video, or something a little bit stronger like acetone, and you can use a metal scraper and you just scrape off all the paint and reuse it. I mean, it is a little bit of a pain in the butt, but hey, you gotta make do with what you got, right? So first of all, I'm going to talk about the brushes that I'm going to be using. I have a nice flat kind of base coat brush, one that we actually went over on the cleaning brushes video that I did last. I'm going to use what's called a rigger brush for line details. We have a small dry brush, and then I have a detail brush. Okay, so these are the brushes I'm going to be using today. So first off, we're going to take my version of a base coat brush, and I'm going to take Mephiston Red. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people have issues with keeping the brushes open, or getting all tongue-tied today. They have an issue with keeping their paint bottles open. One of the things you can do, that's kind of a little cheat that I like to do, is I'll actually cut, using my clippers, the back end of these, so that way I can just take it right off like this, and I can literally use this little the top as a miniature paint bucket right there. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a little bit of water onto my brush. I'm going to use the back of my brush get some paint out onto the I should probably use a smaller brush. Onto my palette. You don't need a lot. A little bit goes a long way. Just put a drop of water, maybe even two. I'm going to take my base coat brush. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start we're going to focus on this leg right here. Now you want your paint to be thinned, but you don't want it to be runny. So kind of the consistency, you just kind of want it a smooth flow to it. You don't want it like dripping because there's like so much water in there, but you also don't want to have it so thick that well, you can literally tell it's thick by its clumping up detail, and it's obscuring small parts, or you might see chunks of paint, or even you'll see brush stroke marks in your paint. That'll let you know, hey, you got too much paint and not enough water or moisture. It doesn't have to be water. You can use thinner, for instance, like Lamy and medium for to thin your paint. It's always better to do multiple thin coats versus one thick, and that's just because it's you're able to build up the colors a lot easier. Let's see, make sure you can see that on camera real good. So you can still see that there's like a little bit of a black tint still underneath the paint. Like you can see it showing through. That just means that the paint's kind of thin in that spot. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of work our way around. Give that a quick second to dry. You can either like blow on it, and that'll actually help speed it along. Now, a lot of the times with these Citadel paints, they go on brighter than what they dry. So with the Mephiston Red, it's a pretty nice deep red, but it will definitely dry darker than what it shows. Okay, and it's almost all completely dry. So we're going to go back and we're just going to get a bit more, and we're going to do it again. Just going over the exact same spots. You want to make sure that it is like completely dry before you do the next coat. Otherwise, you're just going to be pushing that previous wet paint all around, and you can actually make inadvertent brush strokes because of it. You don't have to be like super neat because we're going to be cleaning stuff up. Like I said, I'm just doing this leg area just to kind of show you how it works. Let's get a little bit more on here. There you go. Just starting to get a nice solid red on this color. There we go. I just picked up a bunch of Blood Angel stuff myself. My Indomitus box set should be coming in probably like tomorrow or so. So I plan on doing all the Marines in a nice deep red color. And I also have the Blood Angels Crimson Strike Force, I believe it's called. It's the Battle Force set. So I'm looking forward to getting that painted up in these colors as well. Alright, so I'm going to clean out my base coat brush, because for this moment I'm done with the base coat. And the next step that I'm going to do is a wash. Now, with washes, there's two ways of going about with a wash. All right, you can just slather the entire model essentially in wash and just kind of make sure you tease it into different spots where you want it to be darker. But that's going to tint the entirety of the model in a darker color of whatever shade that you're choosing. So what I like to do is I like to be a little bit more precise in how I apply my wash. I'm going to show you by what I mean. I'm going to move these kind of out of the way. Alright, so I'm going to get some Crimson wash. here. Now, one of the things you can do, you can also use like Lamy medium wash, or this is contrast. It's kind of the same thing. Oh, here we go. Technical paint, Lamy medium. You can mix these two together, and what it is essentially is it's like paint but without the pigment, and it's going to lighten the shade. But that's not something I really want to do at the moment, but it's just an option. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take some of this wash. Now, you definitely want to be very careful when you are opening these washes, and there's a couple reasons for that. One, it has a high center of gravity. So I see a lot of people on Facebook and Reddit and things like that. They always talk about being in the club of they've spilled their wash and it's gone all over the table and things like that, or if they try to like open it one-handed. So when it comes to this, the best way to do it is just to keep your paint or your wash down, holding it, and then just lifting up. So always keep two hands on it, and then just kind of put it off to the side where you're not going to accidentally hit it with your hand and knock it over. You can also cut off the top of the wash, kind of as I did with the other paint here, and you can just use that as your wash reservoir, and that would work as well too. Okay, but in this instance, I'm just going to use a fine detail brush, and we're going to get some wash on here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to very lightly and gently, I'm just going to get a little bit of water in here, just kind of dilute it just a little bit. I don't need a whole lot of wash. I'm going to carefully just kind of feed it into all the little gaps and crevices where a shadow would naturally fall. It's almost kind of like it's what's known as a pin wash, and a lot of times you can do this with like oil paints when you've like glossed a model, and it's called a capillary reaction, where the color will automatically rush into these little recessed areas and shade it, and then you can go back over with like a cotton swab and wash it off. But that's more of a little bit more of an advanced tutorial that I'll cover at a different stage when I'm a little bit more established. So like I said, I'm just kind of treating just little areas where it would normally fall into, because I don't want to tint the entirety of the model. Get into these little crevices right there. Now, washes take a little bit longer to dry versus paint, so it can take up to like, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes depending. If you live in a hot or dry area, like if you have like, you know, really warm weather, it's going to dry a lot quicker than if you're somewhere it's cold or more humid, just because there's more moisture in the air. So you notice how I'm like not doing the entire back of the foot, I'm just catching just the back of this little part right there. Okay, and that's really all you need to do when it comes to washes. So we're gonna wait for that to dry, and we'll come back. Okay, we're back. So it's mostly dry, and we're gonna move on to the next step, and that is we're gonna use Evil Sunz Scarlet. So I'm going to take the detail brush that I have, and we're going to use this to paint on some of the layers. Now, I'm not going to paint the entirety of where we had painted all of the Mephiston red. I'm actually going to pick out certain areas, and I'm going to show you how to do this. And I'm going to show you a really cool trick that you can learn as well. So if you're wondering about where highlights are supposed to add, or where you're supposed to add highlights, one of the things you can do is if you take your, for instance, like a phone, with a flashlight and you put it up to your model, you can see where the light is bouncing off of the model. See the tips of those the rockets, as well as the top of the head and the edges of the armor. That's exactly where you need to do where you need to paint the headlights. Okay. So with that said, we're going to start with Evil Sunz Scarlet. Again, I'm just going to use my thumb here as a little miniature palette. Now, I'm going to start with a kneecap. Now, I'm not going to paint the entirety of the kneecap. I'm actually just going to paint, I want to say, the top quarter of the panel, like this. You actually want your paint to be semi-transparent, so like watered down. It's going to make it kind of blend in with the color below. And then we're going to take just the side of the brush, okay, so not the tip, just the side, like this. And we're going to use the side of the brush to catch that edge, like that. Okay? Moving on. Now, for a large panel like this, I'm just going to do pretty much the entire thing. I might leave the top quarter the original color, but I'm going to get most of this panel to be the scarlet color. Okay. There we go. Same with this miniature panel of armor. I'm just going to catch the edges. When you're doing layer paints, you kind of want to cover, I want to say, like 70% of whatever you're painting, and you kind of want to let the darker color show towards where there's like shadows, for instance. So if you notice inside here, I'm not going to try to touch it here, but inside right there, so here, come up here a little bit more. So in between, behind the knee plate, there's a dark area of the Mephiston red in the wash. You want to keep that alone. Just keep it the color it is. You want it dark back there. You're trying to create shadows. So the top of this little sphere area, just going to kind of hit that real gently with a little bit of paint, because we want happy little Marines. The edge I'm going to catch as well. Now again, this little area, because it's a little bit facing outward, we're going to kind of just paint that area, kind of feather it in. Like this. There we go. You can tell it's dry because it's really thin, so we're going to go back over with another coat. Same with this area. Sorry. I have really, really long arms. Okay. Now you can really see the color transition from kind of the dark area up here going to more of the brighter area. We're going to catch these edges right on the top of the boot. There we go. Catch the edge of this little area. Like that. And don't be afraid if you mess up. You can always go back over and touch up the area, make it look nice. We're going to catch the back area as well. Now, I'm not going to do the entirety of it, like the back area, because there's going to be a lot more darkness back here. As well as just catch the edges. And remember where we put all the washes back here? I'm actually going to kind of stay away from that area where the washes were, or are, I should say. Just kind of feather it out like that. Okay, so that's layering. Now we're going to go into the final step, highlighting. Now you can either do, like I'm going to use Troll Slayer Orange. You can either do the full thing of orange, or you can mix it in with a little bit of scarlet. So that's actually what we're going to do. We're going to mix it in with a little bit of the scarlet red, because I don't want the detail, or I'm sorry, the highlights to be super strong. I just want it to be pretty noticeable. So again, I'm just going to use my finger to get the extra moisture out, because this is kind of important. You don't want a whole lot of moisture in there, like a lot of water, because it's going to make it really runny. So I'm going to just catch the edge of this model. You want to make sure you have a nice sharp brush when you're doing this. And just paint the edges. Okay, I will definitely need a little bit more orange, because that's going to blend in a little bit too much. Especially if you're trying to make it look good on camera, you gotta up it just a little bit. Actually, I'm going to use a little bit of yellow too. As you can see what I'm doing on my palette here, I'm just kind of mixing it together to get a nice kind of bright orange there. Okay. Coming back, we're just going to catch that edge. Now you don't have to do every edge. Just do the edges that are at the top or on the sides. Anywhere that you have a source of light. So if you imagine light is shining on your model, where the edges are going to catch that light. And that is exactly where you want it to go. Okay. Let's get a little extra water in there. Now again, using just the side of my brush, going over the top of the knee pad there. Like so. And we're going to catch the top edge of this rounded area just a little bit. Same with right here. Catch just a little bit. Notice where I'm going. I'm going where the scarlet red was painted before. I'm only using those edges, so that we have a bit of a color harmony as they all kind of go along with the highlight. Okay, just like that. I don't know if you can see it, but that's how you're going to make your highlights. It's going to go just a little bit right here in the little corner of the kneecap. Let's make a little circle. And there you go. Okay. Now check that out. That looks pretty cool. Okay. So there we go. So that's going to conclude today's lesson. And just kind of, can you go over the steps again? We started with a base color, Mephiston red, right? Base is pretty simple. It's your base coat, base, right? Then you have layer paint, Evil Sunz Scarlet that we did. After, of course, we had used the shade Carisberg Crimson Wash into just the recesses. Right. And then we use Evil Sunz Scarlet to not just clean up the area, but to kind of bring that color out of the red. And then we used Troll Slayer Orange for the highlights. Okay, so that is the basics of painting. When you use the bases, washes, layers, and highlights, you can make out some really, really cool looking models. Okay, guys? So until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then.